and what we do. We are really excited to tell you how we are integrating drones into STEM education, as well as introduce you to the world of professional FPV drone racing and why we think it's the sport of the future. Finally, we will wrap it up with some techniques on how to integrate STEM with drones into your classroom. Right, here are your presenters. My name is Dahlton Grover. I'm the Director of Business Development here at PCS Edventures. I have a background in global studies, which actually led me to see the need for extremely high quality education in the K-12 level in order to see extraordinary change around the world. So I work very hard to see these different changes come about with the curriculum that we develop here. So that's me. And then later we'll be bringing in Conrad Miller, who is our professional drone racer, and Michelle Fisher, who is our Director of Curriculum Development. So first of all, who are we? PCS Edventures. We make children's lives better through engaging educational experiences. We like to think that we are experts in hands-on STEM education because we've been doing it for almost 30 years. So our passion is STEM, and what we really want to do is, are we doing okay on tech? Okay, awesome. Feel free to send us any messages if anything is going on during the webinar. This is a live experience, so tech issues may arise. Oh, I'll skip back there real quick. So, as I said, our goal is to really inspire children to pursue STEM with these really incredible educational opportunities. But first of all, if you're not familiar with it, what is STEM? It stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And it's one of the biggest things that people are pushing in terms of education because there is so much need for it in today's world. So let's dive right into what is the mission of PCS Edventures. We want to change the world with our STEM education. As I mentioned before, our aim is to inspire students to pursue STEM utilizing new engaging 21st century methods, largely experiential, hands-on opportunities. It's our goal to reach 10 million children each year through learning labs, products, and an electronic learning system that we are about to launch too, which we're really excited about. So one of the last things I wanted to talk to you about is how we work to help fill the STEM gap. Hold on. Okay, there we go. There's our next slide. So many of you may be familiar with the term of the STEM gap, where what was that? The STEM gap, right there. Oh, good, perfect. We're right on the same slide. So there is this divergence between how many jobs we need in the STEM industry and how many students are actually pursuing it on the collegiate level. So what we want to do is inspire students to really continue to pursue it later on, because that's what's really going to fill those jobs. So recent stats have shown, if we can pop to the next slide real quick. Thank you so much. So recent stats have shown that 75% of the fastest growing jobs in the industry today require a significant amount of preparation in both mathematics and science. So what that means is that all of the jobs of the future are going to require much more STEM than previously necessary. What's a very well-known fact is most of these STEM jobs haven't actually been created. So one of the interesting difficulties that we work with is, how do you inspire students for jobs that don't even exist yet? Well, we will tell you exactly how. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, so I want to dive into our approach with STEM. And I want to say what sets us apart largely as a company is that we're teachers too. I'm actually sitting in our after-school lab that we run 5 days a week, and we get hundreds of students through here because we want our curriculum to be student tested, and we actually utilize our students to really drive the innovation in our curriculum. So we're very much like you, and everything that we produce is tested here in the lab, which is really exciting. And I'll tell you about a drone camp that we've been running recently in a little bit. So let's dive straight into drones and why we seek to integrate STEM topics utilizing drones. First of all, they present an incredible platform to bring STEM topics to life for students. You can dive into anything from electrical engineering to mechanical engineering. You can even discuss material sciences with the carbon fiber frame and whatnot. So the ability to learn a variety of different topics allows us to integrate these different types of curriculum and create that cross-curricular learning experience, which really translates well into the real world. In addition to that, there are so many new jobs in the drone industry. If we can move to the next slide. Here's a list of just, I think this is about 40 jobs that are arising in the drone industry right now. So it gives you an idea how many jobs we're going to need to fill within the next 10, 20, 30 years. And drones are just one example, and we think that they're an incredible platform to do so. So I would like to use this segue to talk about how we specifically have used drones in our after-school program. If we can pop to the next slide. Perfect. I think we are up to date there. So as I mentioned before, drones provide that rich opportunity to not only dive into a variety of topics within the STEM genre, but it incorporates a competitive aspect. And it's one of the reasons we truly think that drone racing as a, as a sport in high school, it's going to be the sport of the future. So on our slide here, we've got some images from a couple of drone camps that we ran this summer that were very successful. Students had an incredible time. What was really great about it is our way to integrate so many different students and allow them to experience the competitive aspect of a sport, but in an educational setting. It was very unique, and what we ultimately want to do is recreate this on a much bigger level. We want to create a high school drone racing league, very similar to robotics competitions that are around the country. So let's bring in our professional FPV pilot. Conrad, pilot named Furadi Miller.
Hey, how's it going, Bill?
Good, how are you? Thanks for joining us today.
No problem.
So first of all, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about how long you've been flying drones.
Hey guys, my name is Conrad. My pilot name is Furadi, and I've been flying for about 2 years now.
Okay, how did you get into it?
I got into it because at the time, in the summer of 2014, I was flying RC helicopters. And so I was researching helicopters on a message board and just stumbled across a video of someone flying a drone in their front yard. And he was doing it through first-person view, and then that whole concept just totally appealed to me, and I just dove right in.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the first-person view? It's called FPV, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you explain that to our viewers, what that is, how it works, and why that really transformed, it from simply being an RC copter to an FPV-enabled drone?
So the way that FPV works is there's a little security camera on the front of the drone, and then there's a transmitting system, and it sends a signal back to our goggles. So there's like a little TV screen on your face. So when you're flying, all you see is the perspective of what the drone sees. So, it kind of immerses you in your environment. So you're flying through your backyard or your park, and you're whizzing past trees going 50 miles an hour. And because of that perspective, it feels like you're going 100 miles an hour.
Wow. Very cool. I can see where the adrenaline kind of ties into that. So you actually have some kids that fly with you. Can you tell us about your children that fly with you and how you kind of got them into that?
Yeah, so I have 2 teenage boys. I mean, I have 4 kids total. But my older boys, as soon as I started flying drones, they were just totally psyched about it. I think that's to be expected. And as soon as I could afford it, I built up kind of a cheaper drone that they could use. But before I did that, I put them on a simulator so they can get used to the controls.
Right.
But then I took them out flying, and I mean, yeah, they were as hooked as I was, but I wasn't too surprised about it.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of starting out, you said that you are the ones that built the quads, not only for you, but your two sons.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you learn? You had a history in RC cars, so you already understood a little bit of the components,
Mm-hmm.
but in terms of education, how would that be a really good way to translate what you learned?
Well, when you're building drones, so in the beginning, we were piecing these things together ourselves. So you would buy your frame, and you would buy your flight controller, which is like the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and then you would buy your separate speed controllers and your motors. And along the way, I had to learn how to integrate all these circuits together. So, the flight controller ultimately determines what you want to do, and it sends a signal to each speed controller, which in turn controls each motor. So, I mean, it was a huge learning process, and I learned a lot about, just circuits and just how the current flows through the speed controllers to speed up and slow down the motors. I mean, yeah, it's been a huge learning process.
I bet, and it's very much what students learn in robotics classes.
Mm-hmm.
I just would say that drones take it to the next level, literally and figuratively, because it's a flying robot, and we
Mm-hmm.
like to call them flying STEM labs.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you think that translating this incredible sport that you ranked incredibly high in the world, by the way? He just got fourth in U.S. drone nationals and competed in worlds as well.
Mm-hmm.
So can you see this translate over into the high school realm?
As far as a sport?
Mm-hmm. As a combination between that sport environment and an educational kind of extracurricular opportunity.
Yeah, I think so, because the crazy thing about drones is it draws in such a diverse demographic of people. So we have techies that are into the electronics and the software side of it, and then we have like skateboarders that are into like the
Right.
creativeness, and then we have like thrill seekers that are into the speed. So, and like me, I used to be a motorcycle rider, and that was kind of like my fix. And drones kind of like it fills that need for me now. So I think when you talk about high school age kids, and they might not necessarily be interested in robotics,
Mm-hmm.
once they understand that, hey, you can strap this thing on your face and basically, scare yourself half to death, I think it's going to draw a lot of people in.
So it's a challenge, for students to learn all these systems and subsystems in terms of building before they can even go out and fly.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what we want to see and what we've done to develop in our drone kit. So we're really excited.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any last things you want to tell us about the sport, about maybe your son Sorel? Conrad and Sorel have been flying together, and actually Sorel also competed in U.S. nationals, drone nationals,
Mm-hmm.
not worlds, but. So it's an incredible sport that levels the playing field. It seems like pretty much anyone can get involved.
Yeah, and so drones are they're all about your hand-eye coordination.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing about kids is their reflexes are much faster than ours. And, that's why they're so good at video games. But so Sorel, my 13-year-old, we went to a race in Oregon to qualify for nationals together.
Mm-hmm.
And he handedly kicked my butt. And I did everything I could, and on that day I couldn't beat him. So it's definitely something that younger people excel at. And the older you get, the slower your reflexes are going to get. And then just to kind of jump back to the learning side of it, like what PCS is doing with Rhinology, I think that's going to help a ton, because when I built my first drone, I spent hours just reading and watching videos and troubleshooting, and yeah, it was rough.
Yeah. We're really excited about it. Thank you for joining me, Conrad. I think we're going to hand it over to our curriculum expert, Michelle.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm our Curriculum Development Director as well as our Director of Training. And so my background is in education, and so I come from teaching high school in Oregon, where I'm from, as well as middle school, 6th grade math and science. And so I came from a life science background. 5 years ago, I never would have expected I'd be here talking about drones and robotics, but I taught at a small school, and so as I'm sure some of you know, at a small school, nobody does just one or two or three things, and so I ended up teaching our robotics class during the school day as a STEM elective, and then also coaching a robotics team after school. And so what was really exciting for me was to see how excited my students were about STEM. For so many of them, it was something different. It gave them a reason to come to school every day. The ones that were in that program after school felt like they really had this place that they belonged. So I'm really excited to be working in our after-school program here in Boise. As Dahlton mentioned, we are running drone camps all summer. We're always looking for the newest, most exciting thing we can bring to our students to draw them in and get them excited about STEM. And through that experience, we were able to learn a ton about the best way to approach drones with our students, what's most exciting for them, how to structure it so we can incorporate all of this STEM and give them a really powerful experience. So I'm excited to share all of that with you today. As you're going forward, I'm going to hit on 4 kind of main points as you launch your program. So one is thinking about, who are your students and what are your goals for them? And then as you get into the nitty-gritty of launching your program, we learned that there was a lot to it. So what are the laws and regulations to know about? What equipment are you going to need? And then how do you create a comprehensive STEM program that's beyond just teaching students how to fly, but how to leverage that excitement that they have to fly and race to engage a lot of students in a really in-depth STEM education experience. So this is where we started, was rules and regs. And so as we were preparing to launch into this program, there was a ton to learn. And kind of like Conrad said, at first you're kind of just swimming out there and trying to figure it out. And so the 2 main places all these regulations are coming from, there's the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, which sets all the legal rules about what you can and can't do with your drone. And then they've also worked really closely with the AMA, the Academy of Model Aeronautics, who sets a lot of the recommendations for best practices. And so if you're looking at getting into drones, these are definitely the 2 places to start. And as we got into this, we found that there was just a lot to it, and we became really passionate about making sure our students really understood how to fly drones safely. There's so much bad press out there, unfortunately, about drones, and I'm sure we can all think of the story of someone using their drone to spy on their neighbor or interfere with firefighting, something really negative. And so our passion is really to educate students so that they can become a part of this really well-informed, positive drone community that can think about ways drones can be used for good and to make the world a better place, as well as having this really high-speed sports experience that they can be really excited about. So as Conrad mentioned, as he and Dahlton were talking, to do this, we developed an online platform called Rhinology. So we felt like we had a lot of really important information we wanted to communicate to students. A lot of it was highly technical, and so to make that engaging and also concise, we put together an online course that really uses a lot of micro videos, embedded short bits of text to engage students in all the information that they'll need to know to go out and be ready to fly. So you can see here on the screen, it's web-based. So anyone can go on their computer, go to dronology.tech, and if you have your code, you can go and redeem it, and that will take you into your own personal Dronology account. And so this is set up as a student goes through. They've got a series of levels you can see over on the right. So this includes things like essential drone knowledge, what are the components of a drone, what are the laws and regulations to be aware of, and then some other considerations like what are the safety concerns to be aware of, how can you make sure your LiPo battery doesn't catch fire, when do you actually need to be wearing safety goggles, and then also the ethics side. There's even a section called being annoying, so that students are prepared to know the things that may not technically be rules, but that they should be aware of as they're going out and being in the world with their drone. And so the way this is set up is that as students work through, they watch a series of videos, and then at the end of each unit, they take a quiz. And so for our students in drone camp, they had to ace all 7 quizzes, and then once they had done that, they were able to earn their official certificate of achievement for Rhinology. And so for us, that meant they'd showed that they really understood all the laws, they knew how to pilot, they were fully prepared, and then from there, we went out and started flying. And it even says on the fine point there that this is certified by the PCS Drone Advisory Committee. And so one thing that was really important to us is to make sure we were communicating with the FAA to make sure we had the same messaging that they were trying to get out there. And so embedded within Rhinology are a lot of really great resources that you can also use as you're preparing your program. So 2 of them that you can see here that are great to be aware of. One is the FAA has developed an app called Before You Fly. And so this is a free download. You can get it on your phone. And this lets you go and see what are places where you are clear to fly in the airspace, and then what are some places where maybe you would need to notify an airport or use some extra caution. There are also resources for where you need to go to register your drone. And then they'll also connect you to everything you need to know about how high can you fly, where can you fly, and where can you not fly. You know, we talked to an educator who was using their drones to fly for their videography class, and they were all excited to film a football game, and then they got a cease and desist note from the FAA because they had no idea that flying over big events like a football game is technically not allowed. And so this is all in here so you can feel really informed as you're getting started, to know that you're setting your students out on the right foot and have all your ducks in a row as you're launching into your program. So in addition to Rhinology, once you've gone through all of these slides, here you can see that registration page we were talking about. Be sure you're getting your drones registered if they're above that weight requirement. That app is there if you want to check it out to figure out where you can fly. And then once you've gotten through all this sort of nitty-gritty, then you get to the fun part, which is choosing your equipment. And so obviously at this point there are so many drones to choose from, everything from a tiny nano drone that can fit in your pocket that you could fly inside, to a huge professional grade camera drone that might cost upwards of $2,000. And so we started out flying some drones that we were able to find, and through our experience with our students eventually really identified the things that were most important to us. And here we were really lucky to be able to work with the guys out at Thrust UAV. Conrad works out there, and they're a really talented team of racers that also build and fly their own drones. And so they worked us really closely to develop a really beautiful education drone that you can see on the screen there. So we call her RubyQ. Our robot is RIQ, so they're part of the same family. And these were the things that we really wanted to be sure were part of an educational drone. So the first thing for us was that students could assemble the drone themselves. And we saw this during the drone camps, that this was really powerful for students to start not with just an out-of-the-box drone like you might get at the store, but to start with a bunch of parts. And so that gives them that experience to understand what each of the components are, to get to put them together. Through that experience, we found that our students got really invested in the drones. They took a lot of ownership in them because they had put them together literally bolt by bolt. And for the students that were a little intimidated, it also really broke down some of that fear. I think coming in brand new, if drones is something that you maybe haven't done before, it can be really scary. And so having that time to really hold each part, put it together, understand how it works, can be really powerful for some of your students that may be a little intimidated from the get-go. The other thing that was really important to us was that students could configure it themselves. And so since drones are really complex robots, we wanted students to have a chance to engage with that. So some drones they may have flown before on their own outside of school come pre-configured. So you just take it out of the box, the radio is there, and you start flying. And you don't really have a chance to engage in that robotics and programming side. So RubyQ is based on totally open source software. The great part about that is, number one, it's free. And number two, there's a really active community of people working in that system, innovating. So students get a taste of that and then could become a part of that if this is something they decide they're really serious and want to get into more. Two other kind of practical considerations. We wanted to be sure it could be taken apart and rebuilt. So there's no soldering required. All the electronic components are plug and play. So at the end of the season, your students can completely take the drone apart, store it, and the next group that gets in gets that whole experience from the beginning of building it from the ground up. And then the final thing was that we wanted to be sure it was fun for a beginner to fly. And so it comes with a built-in GPS, which was really important to us because what that allowed the drone to do is to have a number of flight modes that make it really great for someone who's just starting out. So it has a self-leveling feature. It can even hover, which means it can hold a position in space using all the data from its GPS sensor so that, say, if a student is just starting, they need a moment to take a breather, they can have the drone just hover there and then take the controls over and keep going. A final safety feature that also allowed is a return to home feature. So if a drone gets way out of your line of sight or is going the wrong direction, just by flipping a switch, it can remember where it launched from, come back and land all on its own. So with those features in mind, we really wanted it to be something where students, just from the very beginning, were excited about it. And then from there, they can level up, move it into more of a mode that would be similar to what a racer would use as they advance their skills. So whether they decide they want to go into racing or get into videography, this is a drone that was really designed for an introduction that could then be gone into any sort of different direction based on the student's interests and what they wanted to do with that drone. The second part of equipment, though, is that the drone was just the beginning. And so what we found is once we had our drone, there also were a number of pieces that we also needed to figure out and make sure they would all connect together. And so if you're looking into starting a drone program, this is the checklist. So you'll also want a radio controller that matches with your drone. Our kit comes with two, so you can tether them together, and it's kind of like your parking brake from driver's ed. An instructor can flip a switch and take control of a drone right away if a student is having trouble or needs some help. To be able to fly FPV, you're also going to want your FPV goggles, like Conrad talked about. And then you're also going to want something to help your students train. So like Dahlton and Conrad talked about, you want to start your students on a flight simulator. I think we all know people that have gone out with a brand new drone and crashed it the first time they flew. And so what a flight simulator allows students to do is to practice in a really low stakes way. So they can crash and crash and crash and feel a lot more confident when they go out with the real drone. So to be able to do that, one thing that was really important to us was to be able to have lots of students on the flight simulator at the same time. So in the package that we put together, we also included some game-style controllers. Radio controllers, high-quality one for drones, are really expensive, and so by using a game controller, you can have a lot more students engaged at the same time while practicing. So then when they go out to fly, they're all ready, they all have that experience. So in the package that we put together, we didn't want there to be any additional items that you would have to go out and source. And so it includes, in addition to your radio controller, your goggles, a full set of game controllers, and licenses to a really great flight simulator that we've tested, tried with our students, and had really good experiences with. Some of the other things that we also wanted in there are the safety equipment. So you've got your lab goggles, you've got a bunch of batteries, and you've got a high-quality charger, so you can charge your batteries up before you fly and also discharge them before you don't fly. One thing a lot of people also haven't heard of often is the LiPo-safe storage. So we started just with a huge metal box and eventually have upgraded to the products we now include in the kit, which are really high-quality bags that will keep your LiPos from going anywhere if something does happen and they do explode or have any other trouble. So that is all within that one set of equipment so that everything you need comes all included and it all meshes with itself to work really well. And then the final part for us is, any set of equipment is only as good as the program behind it. And so it's not really about a drone, it's about the experience students have with that drone. And so through our drone camps this summer, we've been able to develop a really comprehensive STEM program around the drones. And so what you can see on here is our lab card curriculum. If you're familiar with any of our robotics or other lab cards, it's set up in a really similar structure. So if your students have engaged with that before, that's great. They're really familiar with it. If you haven't, the idea is to make it a really hands-on, student-driven experience. And so for your instructors, this is really powerful because you don't need to be an expert. I talk to people in after-school programs or STEM classes all the time that are really excited about STEM, They want their students to have this experience, but they have zero background. Maybe they're 75 years old and have been elementary school teachers their whole life. Maybe they're an art teacher, but they see the potential and they want to bring it to their students and bring all of their experience into that teaching. And so what this frees you up to do as an instructor is to really be a mentor and a coach, and to even model for students what it's like to learn something that you aren't 100% an expert in, and to show them how that can work and still be a really good experience. For students, what this means is that they're not dependent on the teacher to be an expert or to be an authority, and so they're really set free to work through the curriculum at their own pace. They can explore the areas that are more interesting to them, and it's really important to us to build in opportunities for students to really be creative, have some choice to make it a true project-based experience. And so everything builds up to being able to fly their drone, and the way we've broken it down to make it into really small chunks that you can split out into whatever sort of format your program might have is we've got 20 cards with 80 plus activities. So there's a ton really jam-packed in there, and it really takes this 21st century learning approach where we really are intentional about integrating chances for students to collaborate with each other, to solve problems, to communicate, and to use technology in lots of creative ways. So looking at some of the specifics, here's what that looks like for students as they're moving through the curriculum. And so it's broken down into levels. You can kind of see the colors on the cards there. The idea is that it's kind of like the karate belt system. So as they're moving up, they're leveling up, and there are even points assigned to each card. So if you need a quick and easy way to measure students' progress, there's 5 points on each card. By the time they get to the end with all the projects, they can get 100 points. And so as they're going through, first they build. Then once their drone is built, they start to train on the flight simulator. During that time, they can also go in and configure their drone. By the time they get to purple, their drone is finally ready to fly. We start them out line of sight so they can get a feel for the controls, how the drone works. And then blue is obviously the capstone, where that's where you get to strap on the goggles and experience that FPV. And so the other part that we love about the lab cards is that integrated within all those experiences, you can draw in so much STEM. And so obviously you have the programming, the engineering, just by the nature of going forward and programming the drone, building it. That's going to have a lot of applications to structural engineering, mechanical engineering, and obviously robotics as well. But as a part of understanding how that drone works, there's a lot of science that goes into, say, the wave dynamics of transmission. There's a ton of electronics that goes into how those parts work, like Conrad talked about, and you can go from there, dive into electron flow, energy transfer. Within that material science, you can go deep into the chemistry of why is carbon fiber a different sort of material than aluminum or G10. And then obviously when you go to fly, there's tons of forces in motion, so you can look at how does a 2-blade prop compare to a 3-blade prop, and how does that affect the aerodynamics and the way that drone is flying. Deep into electron flow and the energy transfer that has to happen to make that drone fly. As Dahlton mentioned, there's some awesome material science that can get you into chemistry of why is carbon fiber going to act differently than a G10 or an aluminum frame. And then of course once you start flying, you've got the forces in motion of how does that drone get into flight, how do the different types of props affect the way that it flies, what are the aerodynamic concerns that a drone racer is going to think about as they're designing their drone. So as you can see on here, we align all of our products to multiple sets of standards. We know that different programs are operating with different goals, and we want to provide you with as many resources as possible to know how this aligns to what you're doing. So it is all aligned to next generation science standards content, and also to the ISTE technology standards. The new ones are out for 2016, and they're really fabulous, covering things about ways to engage students in inquiry, ways to empower them with technology, understand the ethics of technology use, and that provides lots of opportunities for students to use technology to share what they've learned in really creative and real-world ways. So for us, the goal is really to spark an interest in students. There's so much to do with drones, and we will definitely provide an introduction to all these really core concepts, and our goal is that that'll get students interested to want to learn more. It may provide some relevance to some things they're already studying, a way to see those things applied in real life. And so the goal is that if they get really excited about this and fall in love with it, they're going to be motivated to do the work, to go deep out of that curiosity instead of out of something they maybe have to learn because it's a part of a course. So moving on to the next slide here, the one last thing I want to highlight is also the resources we provide for you as an educator. So our curriculum comes with the lab cards for the students that really break down for them that core information they need to know, that sequence of activities on how to build, configure, fly, work through Rhinology, be on the flight simulator. As an educator, you have this really exciting role of facilitating that experience. And so to give you all the resources you possibly can, this includes prep tips, safety guidelines, how do you set up a safe flight field, when do your students really need to wear their safety goggles, and what are some of the best practices, some things to think about, how are you grouping your students, how are you flowing through the curriculum, how are you really stepping in and serving as a mentor to really empower them to have a really positive experience.
Came through already was if an assessment piece will be included.
That is a great question. We hear that a lot. And so we have a number of different assessment resources in there, knowing the different programs have different needs. So in a classroom setting, we often hear people want to know, are you hitting content standards? In an after-school setting, you often want to be able to show that your grant money was used well. So one way we do that is on every card includes a couple questions to check for understanding that match the contents covered on that card. We're also looking at including some rubrics on there if you work with a kind of authentic assessment model and want to assess their skills on some more of those 21st century skills, how they're collaborating, how they're solving problems. And so those will both be included as resources. And there's also that point system. If you need a way to track that students are moving through something, maybe if you have a grade book you have to add into, that's another way some of our educators have really tracked, knowing that the real learning comes from the students doing. And so with those points, you can record what they've accomplished and how far they've gotten in the curriculum.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Yeah, can you adjust the age range of students that this would be appropriate for?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've worked with students in our lab as young as, gosh, maybe 9, but with this program, we really targeted 8th grade and high school students. And so obviously you know you students best, but this would definitely be an advanced platform because students can go really deep into it, and the drone itself can really get up to those advanced flight levels. What would you add, Dahlton?
We have approved it for as low as 7th grade, so if you do have a middle school program, I would say it's very suitable. But what we actually did is we recently revamped our robotics platform and curriculum, and that is really suitable for the middle school. And then we recommend that the drone kit is kind of the secondary version, and you utilize that with your little bit older students, kind of going into high school. So that's how we really created it.
Things like robotics are kind of hard to put an age level on. It's really hard to know if your students are starting fresh or if they've been flying drones for years. So we wanted it to be as flexible as possible. But like Dahlton said, it really is our most advanced option. Some of the content that's in there is definitely at the high school level. So we're really excited about it as our kind of most advanced robotics offering yet.
Yeah, very much so. Any other questions?
Yes, so it sounds like they're not hearing me, so if you could restate the question.
Oh, no.
Okay, we'll restate the question for you.
And then there's questions about a repair and service program, an annual fee, what is this going to cost? And to start off with the club of 12 students, what do you estimate the cost would be for that? And how can we contact you for more? So kind of all rolled into one.
Okay.
How can we get this? What is it going to cost?
Okay, well, yeah, we'll start with addressing what was just brought up. So first of all, a group of 12 students, I would say the current package system that we've got right now will probably be around 2,500 or probably 3,000 for around 12 students. To address the annual cost, how we've designed it is once you have the drones and the controllers and your goggles, you'll have those always. What you will need to repurchase is access to Rhinology, so that once your students complete the course, they will still have their specific code for Rhinology and also the flight simulator. So that would be the annual cost. And then of course anything that they need to replace, but we've built it pretty sturdy. So the only thing you ideally should be replacing is props. And we have a drone here if you want to show them.
This is a thrust UAV Riot 250R Pro. This is not similar to the RubyQ, but this is our like pro level racing drone. This will go about 75 to 80 miles an hour.
And so one thing you can see on here, we've chosen props, for example, that bend instead of break. And so I can personally attest, I have crashed our drone into trees, cement, ground, and they can survive those crashes without breaking a prop. And so your kit will come with some of the extra parts that commonly break, and then we'll have available just individual parts that you can replace as needed as students grow through the program. But we really worked hard to know your students are going to crash. All of us have, and so that's just part of the process, and it comes with the supplies. And then your students will be prepared once they built the drone to be able to repair it themselves.
Right. Did we address all of that? Was there any other question involved?
I think so. I think that was all of that.
Okay.
Another question came through here. Are you interested in starting or running competitions at the district or even county office of education levels? Kind of readdressing.
Right. So the question was, are we interested in, running the competitions at district levels or county levels?
District or county, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's something we are really looking into. First of all, since it is so new, we want to bring on as many schools as possible to almost beta test and make sure that we have enough schools that have the program going so that we can bring a couple teams together. And this is something that we plan to do within the next year, but this is the very first release. So I would say yes, and we are actually behind the scenes working out all of the details as to how that would work.
But that's definitely the long-term vision, is to have this network of schools that have these drone racing teams that can compete against each other to really bring that competitive element into it. And so we're definitely looking for schools now to kind of build that movement and to work up to something really big.
Exactly. Don't be shy, guys. This is your moment.
Any advice on how they can get started? Can you print out extra parts with a 3D printer?
So the question was, any advice on how to get started, and can extra parts be printed with a 3D printer?
So, I would say to get started, this kit really provides you with everything you need. And, as Michelle dove into all of the curriculum development, we worked extremely hard to make sure that not only the curriculum, but the physical materials that you're going to receive will last you and give you all of the necessary information, whether it be regulations that you need to maintain, local groups, flexible props, everything like that. So, and we are very open to anyone that requires additional help. We offer professional development similar to this, but it would be a private webinar that we could walk anyone through, and you would always have access to that personal webinar and utilize that as a training tool for any new instructor that you brought on. So that's a great way to start. And in terms of 3D printing pieces,
yeah, it's a great application. Once students have built this drone, they'll really understand the components. And so if they were able to go in and design those parts, I think there's definitely an opportunity there for them to dive into that aspect. What would you say, Conrad?
I think, there are probably some parts that could be designed on a 3D printer to maybe kind of accessorize or something of that nature. Obviously, nothing structurally integral to the cockpit.
but that is a great way to integrate other, STEM curriculum into the use of drones. There's so many different ways that you can utilize them. We love the option of utilizing them for, the sport of the future and creating that high school drone racing league, but incorporating some, computer-aided design and 3D printing into it would be really unique and awesome.
Absolutely.
There's a question about how to set up your own racing course. What kind of space is needed and how does that work?
What would you give a like the smallest area that you would recommend for a track?
Yeah, the question was, how do you set up your own drone racing course?
I would say to start maybe about the space of a tennis court, or maybe like half of a tennis court, and then really to make a course, you would just need like something like dollar store pool noodles that you could use as like flag markers, or you could make arches that you're supposed to fly under.
We hear from a lot of teachers that they're flying on soccer fields, football fields, tennis courts, and one thing we do provide as part of the curriculum is resources for, like Conrad talked about, kind of DIY gates and flags. You can buy them, but there are lots of ways to construct a course yourself with really simple materials.
Just setting up your contact information. There's a lot of questions that come up on that.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Where can they find videos of drone races? And is there an online community that will be supporting the process here with Group Q and all of that?
Okay, so I guess first of all, you take it away first.
Yeah, so the question was, where can I find online videos of drone races and drone flight, and will there be an online community supporting this process? So for this first question, Conrad, I think you would be the ultimate resource.
To find videos, you could just simply go to YouTube and just search for drone racing, and it's going to pull up hundreds of different results. That's probably the easiest way.
And would you say there's a really active FPV community online, sharing information, following up with each other?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of online communities that are specific to drone racing. I don't know how that would tie into the STEM side.
There are a lot of communities that you could ask questions to, but specifically if you were looking to implement it with education, and say you got our kit, we would definitely be the first people to jump in and provide you with any sort of support. Another great place to look for drone videos is AirViews. It's AIRVUZ, and that's purely drone video content. If you don't want to be on YouTube, I know some teachers are a little hesitant to have YouTube up in the classroom, so that one is purely drone videos if you want to look at that as well.
For sure. And another thing is we are really committed to staying in touch with the people we work with. So like Dahlton talked about, we do a lot of professional development, and not just when you first get the kit, but staying in touch. And so providing online support, both on the technical end as well as the implementation end. And so we often are hearing from customers long after they've done it to really stay engaged. How can we use this? What can we do next? And so we're definitely committed to being there to support that as this process goes forward.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Last question, if I want to start a drone racing league in my high school, what are the steps I need to take? Can you help me?
So the question is, if you want to start a drone racing league in your high school, what are the steps and can we help you? Of course we can help you. Yes, that's what we're here for. I believe, so Alexandra can send you some of our information and then we can, discuss how to move forward. A great way is to start it within a single high school, but what we're looking to do is also expand it to multiple high schools. So if you have other high schools that are near yours that might want to be included, it would be the perfect beta test to try and bring all of these teams together from the schools and compete with one another. And again, we would be there every step of the way, helping you incorporate all of this new technology, the curriculum, and then obviously setting up the race.
And in fact, the capstone at the end of the Drone Lab Card curriculum is for students to put on their own racing event so they can really showcase their piloting skills. And so this would be a perfect way, once they've done that, they're ready to start a drone racing league.
Yeah.
So there was another question about the yearly cost, so maybe just address that again. And then there's a question about how this relates to FIRST robotics, if at all.
Okay. So it's similar to how First Robotics is run. I'll address the First Robotics question first, but we are an independent organization, and it's the very same idea, though, is essentially running these competitions nationwide. It's just a different platform. First utilizes ground drones essentially, and we utilize air drones.
Mm-hmm. We actually hear from a lot of schools that are in first that they often do drones in the spring and summer when the first season is over. So it can almost be kind of like your second season sport. It can really complement that well, and it can even draw in a different group of students that maybe weren't into first, but maybe would try out drones and could even draw them into that program as well.
Right. And then to address one of the final questions about the annual cost, I would say the bulk of the cost is going to be upfront, getting your drones and your controllers and your goggles and having that at your fingertips. And then the login codes for both Dronology and the FPV flight simulator for each student is what you're going to need to repurchase, and you can bundle that for exactly how many students you're going to have that season.
Is PCS considering to create a lower level course, an introductory course of these drones for younger students to get excited, similar to LEGO's Junior First Robotics?
Okay, so the question was, have we been considering creating more of an introductory, lower grade level appropriate, course that's similar to the Lego, the Junior Lego League? It's something we've been playing around with, but we just finished this kit. So, really what we want to do is make sure that this first round is perfect, I would say. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think we'd love to. Right now we're really focused on the upper level, and maybe someday in the future we'd love to complement that. But for us, the first step is really to get all these schools with their drone leads up and running, really successful, and then to look and see, okay, how else can we build this?
Right.
Will you just let them know that we'll follow up with anyone who attended and make sure that we get any of their questions answered?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for attending. If you have any final questions, we will be reaching out to you if we have your email address and whatnot and you attended. And we're so happy that you attended. Thank you. And we hope you learned a little bit about STEM and the integration with drones.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.